Welcome back to Church Public. I'm Matt Odegaard, your host as always, and today we're asking the question, have we erased God? And what does that mean for you? And what does it mean for me in everyday life? Today we revisit an old philosopher, Nietzsche, who told the world that God is dead. What does that mean for us today? In current events, from a Christian perspective, we look at an ex-Democrat who has realized that this culture is in a spiritual decline. And we look at a Wall Street Journal poll and corresponding New York Times article that shows the values of this current culture. And spoiler alert, they're not great. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Again, I'm Matt Odegaard. This is Church Public. Really appreciate you stopping by today. We've got a lot of things to talk about. We're going to talk about some news stories because I think it helps us understand the world by looking at current events from a Christian perspective. That's what I'd like to help you do. I want to help you understand how to live out your faith. And in order to do that, sometimes we need to know what we're walking into each day. That's why I have started Church Public and continued it for these years. I just really want to be a resource for you if I am. And if this is helpful, hit the like, subscribe, share, do all the things. You know what to do. If not, throw your phone out the window, throw your computer in a pond because you're not going to need any of that anyway. But if you haven't already and you want to see the video, audio listener, I love you. If you are just listening on audio and you want to see the video for any reason, you can go to churchpublic.com. There should be the video there. If for some reason it doesn't link up on the regular video pages, I will put a link to some other place and get you the video in some other way. But you can subscribe and like and share in all of the regular subscription places, and you all know how to do that by this time. All right, let's go ahead and start out today. And you know, I hope you don't check out right away when you think we're going to talk about philosophy. I'm going to try to make it as understandable as possible. I really try. I really do try. Like, I like reading these weird and old and thick books behind me. That's just the way my brain works. But I really try for you to boil it down to something that is understandable. I think that's helpful. And if it's not, shoot me a message and say you're out of control and talking too intellectual. I really try not to. And the reason I really try not to is I want to help you understand how to do this. I want to do whatever research I can for you so that you can understand. And please, by all means, as I always say, check my work. Read the Bible for yourself. I really hope you do. I encourage you to. I really hope that you read your Bible every day and study this every day yourself, because I want you to have the tools to be able to follow God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. And that mind one is really important. And I think as a church, generally, we've not done a great job at that. We've done a lot of emotional things. We've done a lot of kind of spiritual things as a church. We haven't done a ton of mind things. We have to engage God with our mind. We don't exist in a blind faith, and we don't have to. There are great resources for how you live. Anyway, I've got off on a tangent. Didn't mean to do that. What I wanted to say is there was a philosopher named Nietzsche. You've probably heard of him. You've probably heard this quote. Nietzsche said, "God is dead." And he was an atheist. He's a rather famous atheist. He did not believe in God, as far as I know, throughout his whole life. However, he did understand the foundation of civilization. He really did. He wanted to make the world a better place. And while a lot of his writing gets off in what I would say are the weeds, we're not going to look at a lot of that today. I just want to think about this one thing. Is God dead? And what does "is God dead" mean to us? What did it mean to him? I think this quote is often misunderstood. I think people believe that they hear God is dead, and they think Nietzsche was saying it's a good thing that God died. And in one way he was, because he was saying for a couple of people, and really it was a very few people, he was saying it was good. But he said basically for everybody else, it's not good. It's not good that God has died. And we need God in the world to help us understand the foundation of morality. That's really what he was arguing for. He said that there might be some freedom as a society without God, but mostly there would be less freedom. Nietzsche argued that the death of God didn't strike as a good thing. Without God, the basic belief system of Western Europe was in jeopardy. He put it this way in a book called Twilight of the Idols. He said, quote, "When one gives up the Christian faith, one pulls the right of the Christian morality out from under your feet. This morality is by no means self-evident. Christianity is a system, a whole view of things thought out together. By breaking this one main concept out of it, mainly God, the one breaks the whole." In other words, Without the foundation of morality from Christianity, society is, I would put simply, doomed. And I've talked about this a lot. How do you base your morality? How do you base on what is good and what is bad without a concept of God? Is it your idea? Is it his idea? Is it your neighbor's idea? What do you do with morality? How do you decide what is right and wrong if you don't have a concept of God, if it doesn't come from outside of yourself? And Nietzsche agreed with this. He argued, and I would argue, that society can't operate in a moral kingdom without God. It's just not possible. And now, 150 years or so later, after Nietzsche, we're eating the fruit of this very tree. We have no cultural morality as a nation, and we see this every single day. And this is just the reality. And part of why I started this channel, because I see this, and having been a pastor for 20 plus years, and even growing up in the church before that, it was easy for me to see that spiritually we've been going downhill. Yes, this culture is seen as spiritual but not religious, but what does that even mean? And does it mean anything? And is it even helpful? And I would say it's not that helpful. We need to be spiritual and biblical, not just weird spiritual and weird religious. So you have Tulsi Gabbard, I guess I would call ex-Democrat, who came out and talked about this a little bit. And I think this is a great clip. And the reason I like this clip is she's not really a conservative. She was liberal for a long, long time, probably still is. She was a Democrat for a long, long time. And I don't agree with very much of what she says in other places. However, what she says here is pretty much spot on. And that's why I like quotes like this, because it helps us understand that these values are transcendent, meaning you can be liberal, you can be a leftist, you can be a Democrat, you can be a conservative. Truth is truth, whether you want to agree with it or believe it or not. And that is what I argue for all the time. You can disagree with it, but it is what it is. Truth is real. You can't really get away from it. So let's listen to this clip from Tulsi Gabbard, and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
You see this erosion of this spiritual foundation of our country as a direct consequence of those who are trying to erase God from just about every facet of our public lives. This is one of the main reasons why I chose to leave the Democratic Party, because I saw increasingly how not only were they trying to erase God from or any mention of God, or attacking people of faith, attacking people of spirituality, especially Christians. You see these attacks, and you see the consequences in the direction, unfortunately, that much of our country is headed in, and the damage it's causing to families, to children, to our communities, to our policymakers, many of whom think that they are God and are trying to control us in every possible way.
I think she says that so well. It causes damage to our families, to our communities, to our policies and policymakers. And I love that she brings this out too. She says they think they are God. This is what I argue for all the time. And I feel like I'm kind of a crazy person for saying these things, but these people really do believe that they are God. They have taken the place of God. Now, whether they would say that out loud or not, they are acting like it. And it's this idea, I mean, even Jesus talks about this when he says, deny yourself, because it's very easy for us to put ourself as our God, make ourself the center of the universe, which in essence is making yourself a God. That's just how it works. If you are the center of the universe, well, by nature, you're God. That's just how this whole thing works. Even if you don't want to consider that, that's just how it is. If you believe you're the most important person in the city, the world, the universe, well, you're thinking yourself, you're a God. It is the very first sin in the Bible with Adam and Eve, and it continues to be this very difficult sin to wrestle with. So she talks about how, it diminishes and devalues families, children, communities, policies, and this is right. This is the problem. This is the problem with considering that you are your own God and making up your own policies and getting rid of God and spirituality and something outside of yourself that pushes morals down in. So that leads us to this Wall Street Journal poll. And this came out a few weeks ago, and I just think it's very illustrative of where we are, and it goes right in line, exactly in line. I don't even think I don't know. I don't know if Tulsi Gabbard was talking about this particular poll, but I think it's exactly what she's talking about. So this is Wall Street Journal poll. If you're not watching, I'll show you some of this, and we'll talk about some of this, because what this shows, and it came out and it polled a bunch of people, and it talked about how values across the board in America are just basically down. And so here are some of the categories they were in. Patriotism is down. Religion, the importance of religion is down. Having children is down. Community involvement is down. There's only one thing on this slide that's up, and that's money. So great. I guess greed is good again. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it's terrible, but that's the only thing that's up in this poll is the value of money. Yeah, we're living in a material world. Anyway, so that's one thing that we have here. So we have a lot of values that are down in this poll. And what I think is interesting out of this is this was, like I said, a few weeks ago, and I had it on my list. I just didn't really get to it. I think I mentioned it maybe a couple episodes ago, but I didn't really get into it that much. But I do want to get into it a little bit today, because I think this is the problem with our culture right now, and people aren't understanding why, one, this is happening, and two, it makes such a difference. Because I hear a lot of people say, well, we just want to go back to the good old days. We want to, like, why are we why are we now the way we are now? Like, why has it happened so fast now? And this is why, because people don't equate culture and values with the reality of life. What you believe has a direct effect on what you do. That's just the way we are as humans. If you believe a thing, you're going to do a thing. And if you don't believe in a thing, you're not going to do the thing. And specifically, right, when we're talking specifically about, religion or family or having children or communities, if you don't believe in those things, if you don't care about those things, you're not going to do anything about those things. You're not going to say they have any value for you or in your life. That's just how this all works. So New York Times came out with this article. And then a corresponding, I saw it on Instagram, but a corresponding Instagram post about this. And I grabbed a couple of these slides to show to you from the New York Times, because I think this is fascinating that even the left, even liberals are seeing this decline and looking at it and going, hey, maybe this is a problem, which I wholeheartedly agree. These values declining this much is a really big problem. So I want to show you some of the points from the New York Times article, and then talk about it from a Christian perspective as well, because they get some of the points right. I think they get some of the conclusions wrong. So here are some of the slides. Let's just look at a couple of these slides. So this is one of the slides, and where it starts. This is why this article is interesting, because they are pointing directly to Zoomers. And if you don't know, Zoomers is this latest generation, right? Zoomers is the latest generation, past millennials, right? So a younger generation. So this writer, David Brooks of the New York Times, is basically writing a letter to Zoomers talking about this Wall Street Journal poll. So David Brooks says, quote, Zoomers, because you're online so much, you probably saw the Wall Street Journal NORC poll that came out this week. It found that the share of Americans who say patriotism is very important has dropped to 38% from 70%. Let's just pause on that for a moment. Patriotism went down from 70% in 1998 to 38%. In other words, people don't like America. People don't care about America. People will not stand up for America. This gets into the whole Christian nationalism thing. But beyond that, just an idea of, do you care about your country? Is patriotism valuable? Do you care about where you live, or does it not matter? Would it not matter where you live? And I think that's a very important thing. We'll come back to that in a moment. Here's another slide of that. He goes on to say, the share who say religion is very important, religion now is... has dropped from 39% to 62%. So we'll pause there from 62% to 39%. So in this Wall Street Journal poll in 1998, 62% of people said religion is really important. Now it's 39%. Again, this is it's tragic, because people just don't care about religion. This is the spiritual but not religious generation. We'll keep going, then we'll do some kind of follow up and summing everything together. Brooks goes on to say the share who say community involvement is very important has dropped to 27% from 47%. So now we're into community involvement. So this article and the poll from the Wall Street Journal points out that community involvement is way down. 20%, only 27% of people think that being involved in the community is important. And of course, that too makes a lot of sense. Why would you go outside when your community, quote unquote, is online? You don't care if there is a community outside because you have your quote unquote community in the metaverse, in the virtual world. And I'll just say this, is that a real community? When you call on those people, will they be there for you? Will they bring you chicken soup? Will they drive you to work? Nope. None of those things. So community is down. Then this article and the referenced Wall Street Journal poll says the share who say having children is important has dropped to 30% from 59%. And we know this, and we've looked at this, and I've highlighted this over and over and over again. I mean, you have the climate Mother Earth worshipers who say that the whole earth is going to be destroyed if we don't stop having children. The reality is we're not having children. And that's a big problem because we are lower than replacement rate for America in most cities in America. And that means that there's not going to be enough jobs. There's not going to be enough economy. We're already in a bad economy. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse because there's not enough babies to support the population that we have. And you need babies to be born to have a younger generation. Look at Japan, look at some of the issues with China. There's a bunch of other countries that you can look at that did not have enough babies and they're growing older faster than they're growing out. And that's a problem because then you don't replace yourself economically and the whole economy and even the whole society crashes. Not to mention the other things about passing on values and what we're talking about today, morals. Because if you don't have babies to pass your morals on to, who is going to bring those values along with you? And the answer really is no one. No one is going, if you don't teach your morality, your faith to your children, no one is going to know those things. That's how this has worked throughout all of human history. That's how this society works. But we don't do that anymore. And this article points that out. Let's look at another one. Quote, these trends are partly driven by you, young adults under 30. Only 23% of you said that patriotism is very important or that having children is very important. Again, we talked about this. Like, if you don't believe that patriotism is important, if you don't believe that having children is important, you're not going to do it. This goes directly from your beliefs. But let's look at this. Look at patriotism. Why would this generation or even the previous generation believe in patriotism? Every school, not every, most schools in America, I don't know what to say at this point. Like, they teach you that America is bad, that we are a colonizing, evil, patriarchal country, and we're just bad, right? So why would you have patriotism towards this country? We're just bad and evil. I just watched a TV show with my wife the other day where they were the scene was a classroom, and this quote unquote teacher, right? The teacher actor in the show we were watching. And I'm not going to name the show because you probably all know it and have watched it and may or may not have noticed it. This is what I want you to do. I want you to notice these things when you see them. If you don't, the teacher in this show started saying how terrible Columbus was. Columbus was a murderer, colonizer. What did the show say? He committed genocide on America. That is what the media is teaching you. The politicians are teaching you. That is what the schools are teaching you. Definitely the higher ed, like colleges, are teaching you. They are teaching this stuff. And then we ask, well, why is patriotism down? Because you told them that it's terrible. It's terrible to be patriotic to your country is what you taught them in all of these high schools and colleges and movies. Why would they have patriotism? You literally told them not to have patriotism. You taught them for how many years? 13 years, 15 years, 20 years of their life that this country is terrible. And now you say, well, you should have patriotism. Why? Why would you expect people to have patriotism when you told them it's evil? I'm just saying. Let's look at a couple more here. This writer says, my fear is that we've entered a distrust doom loop. There's a phrase for you. He says, people are so untrusting of their institutions and their neighbors, they're unwilling to reach out and actively renew their communities and their country. So the dysfunction will continue and the distrust will increase, and so on and so on. I think we'll look at a couple more slides and then I'll talk about that, because that's a little pot calling the kettle black, but we'll keep going. What really worries me about the Wall Street Journal poll is that people are still pulling inward on a variety of fronts. They are telling pollsters that patriotism, parenthood, and community are not very important to them. Yes, right. And one more. Then this author says, quote, only love and a leap of faith can break through distrust. I'm going to stop the quote there and say, right, but what love and what faith? Let's keep reading, and then I think I'll come back to it. This is why credible form of patriotism is so important right now. We've hit that spot in the cycle of crisis and renewal at which people have to take the kind of common actions that send the vital message, which is, and it's still in the quote here, we can trust each other, end quote. But can we? And that's the thing, right? This is all institutional. It's institutional in the way that you need the institutions around you to build trust, to build community, to build faith, to build values, to build morality. These institutions were specifically designed for that. Institutions like marriage and family and church and community. They were part of the whole that allows you to know what is good and what is bad. You learn that from your parents. You learn that from your church. You learn that from your community. Those are all reinforcing institutions in America and beyond, just in general in humanity. And those have all been hollowed out. Yes, we have distrust. And I would say, New York Times, it's largely due to you and the media industrial complex and the academic industrial complex. You have lied to all of us for years and years and decades at this point. You have lied to us and told us lies about all of these things, about marriage and family and community and America. You told us all of these things were bad and old and misogynistic and patriarchal and all of the isms and ists. You've told us all of those institutions were terrible. And yet now you look at the results of what you did and say, well, can you guys just get along and trust us and love one another? Why? Why would we trust you? Why would we love one another? You told us specifically that we shouldn't do any of those things. And yet now you're saying, well, please do. So the reason why I bring this up is I want you to notice these things when you see them, when you hear them, and know that it's important we understand what our faith is. You need to know your own faith. That comes by reading the Word of God and knowing what it says, and then live out your faith, which is reading what the Bible says and then doing it. Read the Bible, do what it says. I say that all the time, but that's what we got to do. You have to read the Bible, know what it says, and then do what it says. That's the only way you're going to have values, have morality that's outside of you, because unfortunately, you may or may not have figured this out. Your feelings lie to you and your heart lies to you. This culture says, live your truth, live out your heart, live out your desires, but they don't lead you in a direction that's very good. The Bible says the heart is deceitful above all else. In other words, feelings lead you the wrong way. You need to, of course, you need to have feelings. I'm not saying be cold and calculated and uncaring, but you can't let that be the guide for your morality. You have to let truth be the guide for your morality and exercise that truth in grace with your heart, right? You have to get that order correct, or you end up in this weird place where you have no values and no morality and a declining interest in marriage and family and community and helping one another, loving one another. And patriotism, you don't care about anything except for yourself, because this culture has said, don't care about anything but yourself. And then when you only care about yourself, and then you end up in this place where that's a terrible place to live for everybody, you go, I wonder how we got here. Well, yeah. So I'm going to transition from this story, and I'm going to come back to it in a moment, but I'm going to transition from this story into another story that I read on the Christian Post that actually comes out of I think it's an Ipsos poll. I'm going to pull it up here real quick. I think this comes out of an Ipsos poll if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is out of an Ipsos survey commissioned as part of the Alliance Defending Freedom's Viewpoint Diversity Score Initiative. That's a long phrase, but anyway, they did a poll, 3,000 employed U.S. adults, and here's what this one found. I think this goes right along with what we're talking about, because this goes into what do you know, what do you believe, and then what do you do. And this poll says almost 2/3, 3 out of 5 workers fear sharing their faith at work. It says, I'm reading out of the article here, nearly 2/3 of employed adults in the United States believe that respectfully explaining their political or religious beliefs at work can result in negative repercussions. Among their findings, again, this is the Ipsos survey, researchers found that 3 out of 5 respondents said it was, quote, likely or somewhat likely that respectfully expressing religious or political viewpoints would result in negative consequences at work. Additionally, 1 in 4 respondents said they knew someone who has experienced negative consequences for respectfully expressing their religious and political viewpoints. Right, because if you believe something that is countercultural and then you say that out loud in this current culture, you're going to have negative repercussions. Maybe that's getting fired. Maybe it's not quite getting fired, but it's being blacklisted or not being allowed to work on a particular project, or we're getting to a place where, what can you do, or something on social media. Maybe the ADF, the Alliance Defending Freedom Senior Counsel and Senior Vice President for Corporate Engagement, Jeremy Tedesco, was quoted in the announcement saying, quote, these survey results show that a significant number of employees are afraid their religious or political views could cost them their job. Yeah, because of course it will, because you have to agree with this culture, otherwise you are blacklisted. One final piece from this article, other findings of the report included 54% of respondents said they believe sharing political content on their own social media could result in negative consequences at work, and 42% of potential job seekers said they were less likely to apply for work at a company that had a work culture that was hostile to their religious or political views. So this is where we are. We're in the great separation, and we've talked about that over the states where people are moving from blue states to red states, or red states to blue states, vice versa. They're moving where their beliefs lie. There's some good in this, there's some bad in this, but what we're seeing too among a lot of working adults is they can't live out their faith at work. They either are not allowed or they feel like they're not allowed. And even in their personal life, on their social media, on their personal social media page, they feel like they can't post things on their personal social media page because it could affect their work. See, and I know you if you're listening to this, you probably feel this already, but if you post something and someone sees it at work, you may have work repercussions. That's just the reality of where we are. And I've brought you story after story after story because this is really happening across America. It's not just a fable. It's not just something that you're imagining. This is really happening. And it's because of the survey that we looked at earlier. It's because this culture does not value the traditional things. And as soon as you stand up and say, hey, wait, what about those traditional things? Then this culture says, well, we don't talk about that. We can't talk about that because that illustrates that I'm not doing a good job, or this culture is not doing a good job, or something is wrong with me. And as a culture, we can't stand people pointing out that we have things wrong with us. And that is a problem that we're going to have to learn to deal with. And really, as I've said a bunch of different times, we're going to have more courage. We're just going to have to lean into the courage that we get from God. Jesus says, take heart, I've overcome the world. We need to live in that. And even if we are persecuted because of our faith, we need to live out our faith. And this is why I do what I do. I want to help you live out your faith. And I just want to prepare you. I know people say, it's not that bad. I'm just saying it's going to get more and more difficult. We are not on a trajectory where it's getting easier to be a Christian. That's just the reality of the culture that we're in. We're in a trajectory where it's going to be harder and harder to live out your faith. Now, I want to end with some good news because I think there is good news out there, and this is good, and I think we should share this. Try to share good news whenever I can. There's been a series of bans, but these are good bans, in some of this child mutilation. I don't know how to say it. Child mutilation issues. So you have North Dakota passed a ban on gender affirming care. This is a win that we should celebrate. This is out of the Prairie Public Broadcasting. That's where I found this article. I know it's ridiculous. Someone asked me today, actually, where do you find all your news? Like, how do you know all these things? Yeah. So anyway, this is the Prairie Public Broadcasting is where I found this article. But anyway, North Dakota Senate has passed a number of bills impacting transgender people. This says one of the measures, HB 1254, would ban and criminalize gender-affirming care for transgender minors and imposes felony charges on doctors who perform sex assignment surgeries and misdemeanors for doctors who prescribe hormone therapies or puberty blockers to children. Good on you, North Dakota. Keep at it, because we have to keep these children safe. Then the governors from Indiana and Idaho signed bans on gender-affirming care. This is also great. Indianapolis, Republican governors in Indiana and Idaho have signed into law bills banning gender-affirming care for minors, making those states the latest to restrict transgender health care as Republican-led legislature continue to curb LGBTQ plus rights this year. This one is out of NPR, so if you're hearing a little bit of anger in the words, NPR. This continues. Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb signed legislation Wednesday that will prohibit transgender youth from accessing medication or surgery that aid in transition and mandate those currently taking medication to stop by the end of the year. Idaho Governor Brad Little had signed legislation Tuesday evening that criminalizes gender-affirming care for youth. Again, reading out of NPR, so you have to read the euphemisms here. Gender-affirming care means chemical and surgical transitioning of minors, giving them puberty blockers that will sterilize them forever, and cutting off body parts because they believe that they're in the wrong body. They do not believe that God made them perfect just the way they are. They believe that only by surgery are they able to create their bodies in their own image rather than in God's image as they were made. So you have to read through the euphemisms as much as you can. There's a couple more points here that I'd love to get to. This NPR article goes on to say, supporters of the legislation have contended that banned care is irreversible or carries side effects. Right, that's what I was talking about. They argue that only adult and not a minor parent can consent to the treatment. Now, I'd love to take issue with this. I'm taking the win. I love that these governors, these legislators are putting in legislation to protect the children. However, this part is wrong from the conservative side. They argue that only an adult, not a minor or minor's parent, can consent to the treatments. If this treatment is wrong, this treatment is wrong. It doesn't matter if you're 8 or 80, which would be weird, but it doesn't matter what age you are. If this treatment is wrong, if the idea of trying to transition your body from one gender into another is wrong on its face, at its foundation, it is wrong regardless of your age. Yes, we should protect the kids mostly. And yes, you can do whatever you want to your body, but if this treatment is wrong, it is just wrong. And as Christians, we need to understand the foundation of everything that we do. What is right and what is wrong foundationally. That's why we started with the pole. That's why we started with Neiztsche. That's why we have to understand that God is God. He is not dead. And the foundation of what we believe, the foundation of right and wrong, is just right and wrong. And mutilating your body, surgically, medically transitioning your body into something that it is not right, regardless of your age. And I know even conservative politicians and activists are not going to agree with me on that. But if you get down to the foundation of what is right and what is wrong, you have to stay on that foundation. You can't say, well, in this case, it's wrong, but it's okay to do. You just have to say true things. Again, I want to live in a free country where you can do the things that you want to do, but of course, their inclination to help children is correct. A couple more wins that I want to point to here. At least 13 states have laws banning gender-affirming care for minors: Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee, Utah, South Dakota, and West Virginia. I love that. Great job, states. Federal judges have blocked enforcement of Alabama and Arkansas's laws at this time. GOP-led Kansas legislature on Wednesday overrode Democratic Governor Laura Kelly's veto of a bill to ban transgender athletes from girls and women's sports from kindergarten through college. So that's great. Again, not having trans... There's so many weird words here. Not having men in girls' locker rooms. There you go. Don't do that. Arkansas Senate also sent a bill Wednesday to Sarah Huckabee that would require parental approval for Arkansas teachers to address transgender students using their preferred name and pronoun. And it would prohibit schools from requiring teachers to use the pronouns or name a student uses. In other words, pronouns are made up and you don't have to use them, and you're not forced to use them if you're a teacher, which again is a great win. Yeah, I'm going to read this part. So again, this is NPR, but I think this is important to understand. So Dr. Molly McCain, who provides, this is according to NPR, Dr. Molly McCain, who provides gender-affirming health care to patients of all ages, said the new legislation sends a message to people exploring their identity in ways that may not conform to gender norms. She says, quote, it says you are seen, you are safe, you are precious, and your access to healthcare will be protected here, end quote. Now, what I have to say about this is, she says you're seen, you're safe, you're precious. But do you believe that? Are you seen? Are you precious? Are you safe? If the only way to make you safe is to perform surgical and medical procedures on you, is that safe? Is an adult telling you the only way to be safe is surgical and medical and hormonal procedures? Like, really? That's the way to be safe? That's the way to be seen? If they see you, wouldn't really the way of seeing you be to say, I see you and I love you the way that you are? Now, there's some spiritual ramifications. I think physically, you can look at a person and say, I love you the way you are. Spiritually, you need to, as a Christian, look at somebody and say, but God says you need to repent of your sins. You need to change the way you are because, as we read in Romans 3, Romans 5, Romans 6, you are not good the way that you are. No one is. We all need Jesus, and that's the only way that we can be right. But in order to say you are seen, you are safe, it just seems like, again, this person doesn't even believe their own words, because if you are safe, if you are precious the way that you are, wouldn't that mean leaving you the way that you are? But the argument here is you're seen, you're safe, you're precious, therefore change everything about you. Right? I mean, does nobody else see that this is the argument? You're seen, you're safe, you're precious. And I hear this kind of words a lot. We want you to be who you are. And the way to make you who you are is to change everything about you. Again, this is why it acts like a religion. The following God says you're made in God's image, therefore you are perfect the way you are made, except for the sin that needs to be cleansed by Jesus. The trans religion says you are not perfect the way that you're made. In fact, you are almost irreconcilably broken the way that you are, and the only way to achieve perfection is to change everything about you through medical and surgical and hormonal procedures. Do you see the difference? I mean, that's what this is saying. That's what this cult says to these poor children and adults. And that hurts my heart, because I don't think we should devalue humans in that way. I think we should value humans ultimately, because humans are the thing that are immortal, that you will either be with God forever through Jesus Christ, or you will be without God forever, apart from God in a place that is not a great place. So let's start where we began. God is not dead, but this culture is acting like he is. This culture wants to have all of the fruit of a healthy society while at the same time removing all of the institutions that create this fruit. The problem here is that culture, the media, leaders, politicians, activists, and just about everyone has tried to remove the things that actually bring meaning to our world. They have removed the institution of marriage, the family, and the church, which are all traditional places that a person finds belonging and meaning. In previous generations, you would be a part of an actual family with a mother and a father and brothers and sisters. And then from there, you would be a part of a church family with friends, and then a part of a larger community that believed in the same values, the same morals, the same faith that you did. And it was there you found belonging and meaning. You had a role to play, a purpose, and that purpose brought meaning to you and those all around you. The left, this culture, has removed all of these institutions in favor of radical individualism. You do you, live your truth, etc. And as a culture, we've stopped sharing values and desires and morals and faith in something or anything bigger than you. It's just all about you. So we saw the Wall Street Journal illustrating and the New York Times questioning, why don't people value marriage and family and children and religion and God anymore? Why would they? You've told them that there is no value in these things. You've told them to live their truth. You've told them there is no truth. You've told them there is no God. There's no religion. He is dead. Now, if you have made it this far in the podcast today, you know none of that is true. You know that this is all just lies from the devil, designed to break our fellowship, to break our faith. And you know that there is a God and that he loves you and wants you to spend eternity with him. You have value. Your life has meaning. You are loved. The good news, especially in light of Easter, is that Jesus is God. He is real. He did die as a sacrifice, and he rose again victorious over the power of sin and death. So I hope you have a wonderful time celebrating Easter with your family and your community. For Church Public, I'm Ed Odegaard, and I hope that you keep the faith.